If you're going to become more credible in a marketplace or position yourself as a thought leader, and you're going to do that through a book, report, or educational program, I'd like to share with you the steps that I go through when I interview clients to do basically what we call an expert interview. So I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations, and I'm the author of the book Establish Instant Credibility. And one of the things that we do in that book is we develop some kind of artifact that can go out in the marketplace and evidence your expertise and position. Now, this is a little bit different than going out there and teaching what it is that you know. You have a specific area of subject matter expertise. Maybe you have years of experience in an industry. You have lessons that you've learned. And now we want to convert those lessons as a high income professional into tools that other people can use to achieve similar things. Now, most of my clients that are doing this are towards the latter part of their career. They have 20 years of experience and they are not really concerned if they share the getting started information as new people come into the field. Most often, they'll hire these people, they'll train these people, or they'll otherwise benefit from these new folks learning the skills and techniques that they have the ability to teach. And what makes this so powerful using an artifact, and again, this artifact can be a book, a special report, it can be a training program, it could be a course, it could be something that you're hired to do, it could be a brown bag luncheon at your company. The key is it puts you in front of decision makers who can either hire you to more advanced positions or who can pay you services to learn something. And the benefit of those services is it creates some residual income because if we package it in a certain way, you can then deliver that various through various means today. The internet is magic, and you can literally package what you know in the right way and sell it as a product or service. So let's set that aside and let's say you've invested in having someone like me come in and interview you to create those materials, because the first thing a lot of folks say is you don't have time to write a book, or you've tried to write a book before and you never got it complete, or you've got a busy schedule and you really have these in between times to put the book together, but you don't have hours and hours to do the editing and the writing part of assembling, worst case, a course, best case, a small report. So, what I do with clients, and this is very informative because the book itself is not hard education. The book itself is what is the opportunity and why is it important, and then provides the reader a high level plan, which they can either engage you to implement or they can get further information from a more detailed source. The book, report, the artifact is really there to help them understand their situation and start on the path of a solution. So I know that's a little bit different than what you'd find as far as a bookstore book, but ultimately it fits the concept of pre-sales materials. Now, again, we're building credibility by demonstrating your success and ability. So we can't go so far as to just hype you up with hot air. We have to actually have tangible tips and insights that are appropriate for the person who would invest in these materials. And so you might have 20 years of expertise in a marketplace, and the person investing in materials has 3 years of experience and they want to get to the next level, or they're a manager that has a few years of experience in the area, managing people in that area, but they need a new level of expert to solve specific problems. We're writing for that specific audience. So what I will do is I'll go in and we'll do a preliminary assessment. So this preliminary assessment is about extracting some of the stories, some of the key concepts, some of the benefits that you can provide, extracting some of the audience information. And we can do this in a conversation. We can do this over email. But what I do with this assessment detail is I then go in and start doing market research, because again, we're writing for a specific audience. What good is a book or a report? What good is establishing credibility with nobody? You can be a credible expert to nobody right now without any effort. If you're going to put in the effort, you have to be a credible expert for some audience that has a desire, some audience that demands particular types of solutions, and then ultimately you can plug in and solve those problems, whether you're doing it for just fame and fortune, whether you're doing it for fame, just to be recognized, or you're doing it for fortune to find new opportunities in the market. Again, that assessment we need to translate into specific customer avatars, buyer personas, understand the needs and demands, understand who has already solved some of these problems, because there's no use in writing a new book about something someone's wrote about 10 or 15 other times. And then again, what types of materials are they looking at? For some of my clients, it is better to put together 12 podcast episodes than it is to write one giant long book, because a lot of their clients don't like the big long book, but they'll invest in the podcast episodes. So if we're building podcast episodes, I'm using my podcast formula, where you're going to have a program and then you're going to have some kind of call to action that then brings them into an opt-in page and then offers some kind of service, some consultation, some kind of back-end service. So again, we have to look at this whole spectrum, start to finish, as we're interviewing you. And this is why it can take a little bit of time to get this kind of thing set up. But because you are able to do the assessment and my team's able to go off and do all that research, you save a significant amount of time. You can go back and do the work that you do best while we prepare these materials. Now, the benefit of those materials is we end up with a very big binder of audience profiles, the current publications they read, the books and programs they've already invested in, what websites do they go to, what podcasts do they view, where do they hang out on social media, if they hang out on social media at all. We're going to help you understand that audience better, as well as validate that audience to determine whether or not they have any money to invest. Because if we're writing a book to create residual income as you retire, or a secondary or tertiary income source, um, we need to make sure they have money to spend and that they want to spend that money on what you're offering them. Another factor too is it doesn't do any good to be a recognized expert if you're not recognized by anybody. So are there trade associations? Are there business groups? Are there big corporations that could hire you, which would further credentialize your expertise, but also gives you an income source from the knowledge you already have? See, this isn't about you learning something new. A lot of folks never get their first book done because they try to learn the book publishing process. See, I've been a publisher for 20 years now. It's been primarily vanity press, and it's been primarily publishing my own materials and a small group of individuals that I publish their materials under joint ventures. But as I've done this for other people in my social circles and my professional circles, I've developed a system that publishes at the speed of voice. We basically interview you about the specifics of your book based on outlines I've been able to produce from the original assessment, and we build on research and market demographics and market sentiment to get you the materials that you need. Now, of course, if you went to a big publisher, they'd do the same thing. But how many lifetimes do you want to wait to be recognized by a big publisher when you can go directly to that audience and become a recognized expert with that specific audience? So I'm going to ask you about your origin story. I'm going to ask you about challenges that you've overcome. I'm going to ask you a lot of things that happen in a job interview, except the context of that interview is really about helping the listener get started towards a specific outcome. So I'm going to need to know, and I can drill down, and one of the skills that I have is being able to interview people and extract information. And so I'm going to extract from you what the real benefit is. So, for example, we may look at the problem that your client faces or your potential client faces, and then we're going to drill down into a root cause. Why is it that they're facing that, and what happens when they have this problem? And then we're going to build out some corrective actions. Now, that's a risk management methodology, and I've got 10 years of experience in risk management, more than 20 years of experience in business development, uh, just as long in project management. These are typical skills, but building out the SWOT analysis, building out the issue management of problem and root cause, and then documenting that somewhere so that now we have a library of materials. I'm able to take those corrective actions and bullet point them as part of your book outline. Now we go back in and we say, okay, well, here's the problem your client faces. Here's how you've solved it in the past. Do you have any specific stories? Now, one of the things about stories in high income professionals is that very often you cannot talk about some of the nuances of what you've done in business. I've worked for government contractors. I've worked for Fortune 100 corporations. I've worked for the C-suite. I've had personal and direct interactions with senior level executives for both publicly traded companies and private companies. I've been in some sticky situations where we had to solve very nuanced problems in a discrete way. And so I can't go in the year after that something like that has happened and tell you a specific story. But when I work with clients who have similar challenges, we can talk about that one time that they worked with a politician who had a unique problem and we solved that problem. And then we can outline it both the actual what happened and then what is legally able to be shared. Now, I work with my clients under confidentiality. And so the reason why we have the original story documented somewhere and then the final story is because if there are any claims of success or outcomes, there's an FTC regulations that you have to actually have evidence of your claim. Now, the actual evidence of your claim could be damning to you and other people around you. So we ultimately have to proxy that story so it's tangible because the reader has to be able to understand it and it has to be believable. It has to have enough evidence to support your key point and then ultimately not get you in any trouble with a non disclosure. When I was working with venture capitalist firms and startups back in the .com, there was a lot of things that we knew were fact, but we could not present them as such until after the initial public offering or after the investment firm has signed some documents. The key of what we're doing here is marketing, and we're developing an artifact that is evidence for your expertise, but we don't have to spill the beans for everything. So, one of the things that we'll do is after the assessment, after the research, during the interviews, we want to get appropriate context. So, I'm actually working through some materials. I did a 4-hour interview with an expert in his industry. It nearly doesn't matter what industry it is, but we're talking about what is the customer's experience pre-sale. What is the customer's experience with the service? And this is a high ticket service. What is the customer experience post service? We go through all the common objections to purchase. We go through all the common, it's called a stick letter. So basically, someone's bought a product, and before they receive the product, what kinds of things might cause them to get a refund? And so we create stories, we create evidence, we create supporting materials, all within these sessions. The key thing about these sessions is it's a tremendous time saver because what I can do is I can book a studio that this is recorded, video recording, audio recording, or I could bring a mobile studio out to you and we could have a conference room at a hotel, for example, and just go through it. Now, the key thing I do, though, to make sure this works out well is I give the client a notepad and a pen. Okay, they have no electronic devices on them. No telephone calls can be received. There's no computers to be distracted. There's a camera. It's kind of like a deposition. There's a camera, and they get a little notepad and a piece of paper. And then I have my supporting materials in a binder. And then we sit there and we go through these materials. And it's not an interrogation so much, but it really is that deposition style thing because I want to extract as much information as possible. So if we spend 4 hours or 2 days going over your materials, what ends up happening, and this is the magical part of my particular process, and I'm not really concerned about sharing the process because very few people can interview like I do and evaluate the situation and ask meaningful questions. But after this, we end up with a master of sometimes hundreds of gigabytes of audio recordings, video, demonstrations, stories, outlines for articles, outlines for promotional materials. Half of your sales letter is pretty much already written. Your keynote speeches start to get developed. And then after this, we can then extract what it is that book of report's going to be. Now, there are some drawbacks to the way I approach this service because if you're not serious about turning this into an income stream, then it's not right for you. And this is what I mean by that. We're going to capture as much information as possible up front, which is going to help you produce the artifact that demonstrates your value. But Once you've demonstrated your value in the marketplace and people start showing up to hire you for keynote speeches, to hire you for training events, to hire you as a consultant, to hire you or even promote you inside the business that you're in, if you drop the ball on those opportunities, and a lot of folks fear they're going to drop the ball on those opportunities, but if you're not ready to take the additional material that we made and use it to supplement that process so that you can secure these new opportunities. Some folks are getting paid $5,000 to $10,000 to do a keynote presentation. Now you don't have to do a whole lot of those in a year to make a good supplemental income. In the residual side, folks are creating $5,000 and $10,000 training programs. Now they're selling these to corporations. These aren't something that you're going to put list on Amazon, and they're getting these new opportunities both inside the business that they're in and outside. If you're willing to do that and you're coachable when it comes to securing those opportunities, then the investment you make in the 4 hours or the 2 days of, and it usually doesn't take more than 2 days, but of sitting down and locking yourself in a room and extracting this information and going through the emotions of remembering these stories and the nuances of these stories, well, then you will definitely get multiples on the return of investment that it will take to do this kind of program. Now, it's not the right place to talk about what that investment might be because you have to understand what you're getting out of this. When we sit down and we go through the assessment and we go through the research, and in fact, my team's going through the research for you, then we go do the interviews. Then there could be 30 to 90 days of our team digesting these materials, creating podcast episodes, creating books and reports. This all depends on the depth of what you want to accomplish. Creating artifacts that help improve your presentation. A lot of folks really want to manage their LinkedIn better, but just don't have the time. So we can create 52 LinkedIn posts. Sometimes it's a few sentences. Sometimes it's small little paragraphs with engagement points in it, but there are formulas and structures that we use to take the materials that you've put together in this 4 hour or 2 day investment. And this is not something we can do over the phone. Um, we can do it by Zoom calls and we can do it over the phone. We just have different formats for it. But the ultimate thing is this library of materials is working for you in the background while you're off doing your regular full-time job, while you're off running a business, while you're off serving customers. And then as these nuggets are available that we build out on a schedule, you'll literally have an editorial calendar, and then as these nuggets are available, they're posted on your social media, driving back to that special report, generating leads. It could be building lists of recruiters and then getting short emails out to those recruiters for that next opportunity you're looking at. It could be matching you up with a resume professional or career coach who then, with your resume, sends out physical books to senior level executives who are open to new opportunities for leadership roles, executive roles, senior consultant roles, top subject matter roles. Now that same model works well with trade associations if you're going to get into the speaking circuit and you want to speak at trade events. But the key is that library of materials, that content vault that we create. You don't have to go back to that vault. We can go back to that vault for you and create articles, create newsletters, create lists, create lead generation pieces, create sales letters, create everything that you need so that you're not going over in your head and really spending a lot of time on those details. You've invested up front using a system that we bring to you to create this library. Now, the great thing about this library and what is a real value add to what we do is that we can bring in subcontractors and specialists to extract from that library certain things. Because, for example, I'm going to do a rough cut of the video. Somebody on my team will just do the rough cut. If you want finished edit videos for presentations, uh, of course, if you're doing more presentations, we can just hire somebody to videotape you doing an actual presentation in front of an audience. And of course, that's more credible because you have the audience there. But we can take that raw video, add it to your content vault, match it up with other materials in there, get the right messages on your editorial calendar, and essentially basically extending our publishing services. Now, as a publisher, we have a number of channels, and if you are congruent with the audiences that we serve, we can include your content on our channels. We can include your content on partner channels. We can even do the public relations necessary to get your content out in front of other people. But this approach of developing that content library has actually eliminated the hard investment of having to write an article every week or having to write another chapter of the book today. We literally can create transcripts, we can piece things together, build out a rough draft for you, and then walk through the rough draft with you as it is being edited. And then ultimately, you've got a book, report, or program. Now, the key is the message to market match between the artifact we create and that initial audience, because there is a challenge with this. When you see how versatile this content library is, there is the desire to create a lot of content, but again, we package this in the most beneficial way. So for example, if we create a special report that positions you as an expert in the marketplace, and the audience for that special report is recruiters and hiring managers, then we're going to finish the report and then put it in front of recruiters and hiring managers. How are we going to put it in front of recruiters and hiring managers? Well, for some people, it's going back to the content library and creating 12 newsletter articles that are then put out in front of these people through targeted pay-per-click campaigns, by compiling a list of these decision makers and sending it to them through the mail, or various other methods. Again, that depends on your need. But if you don't have the well-written special report that positions you as an expert, that has the right calls to action, that has informative and interesting stories, that speaks in the language of the decision maker, then it doesn't matter how often you're twittering around on the internet, or doesn't matter how well your LinkedIn profile is maintained. You've got nothing transitional to offer. You see, this special report, this key piece of content, is the bridge between the problems your prospects face and the solutions that you can offer. And that bridge, sure, you can get on the phone with people, you can go speak at events, you can do a lot of different things, but if you're not capturing this insight, packaging it appropriately, then you're going to, it's a lot of work. What we're trying to do here is shortcut the amount of work by compressing that into a well-informed session. And then from that well-informed session, we're developing the artifacts necessary in the marketplace. Now, sometimes folks are already working with a publisher, or they're already working with a press company that can finish their program off. So we can gather the prerequisite materials in the fastest amount of time, the minimum amount of effort on your part, and then package it in such a way that you can basically sign it off for approval. Then we send it to your vendor, and then they repackage it. Like I said, we're not doing finished videos. We're not doing finished book layouts. We're not doing a lot of the finished elements, because our job is information management and the marketing side of that activity. Whether it's got a logo or it's got an image that's been edited a certain way, that's not important to us. We're gonna tell you what image should be there based on the psychographic and the desires of your end user, and then someone's gonna go out and use a tool to find an image. Now, we do have people on our team that can do some of that research, and we can suggest images for you based on the libraries that we have access to. But again, it's not about the cosmetics of the materials. It's about the mechanics of the materials, so that when it's in front of a decision maker, they make a decision to do business with you over anybody else. So I hope that's given you an idea of what we do for clients. Again, this is our expert interview service, and I'm currently editing a program, like I said, it's 4 hours long with this expert, and we've got nuggets of materials. I've broken it down into 5 scenes, and then within those scenes, there are 8 to 10 content segments that are going to go out and become articles, and they're going to become special reports, and they're going to become podcast episodes. They're going to become more and more expert positioning, so that this individual, again, invested 4 hours, maybe 5 hours, and they're going to get a year's worth at a minimum, sometimes a lifetime of materials that they can plug into their marketing. They can plug it into their uh, thought leadership or their expert positioning, and then ultimately spend more time doing billable work. They get to spend more time in front of actual qualified buyers. They get to spend more time doing the things that you get paid for, rather than chasing. And again, I see it so many times. People invest a lot of time and effort into a LinkedIn profile, a lot of time and effort on Facebook groups and forums, and they don't see any results, and they get frustrated. My goal for you is passive residual income. My goal for you is new opportunities in your marketplace and converting your expertise into power and leverage in the area of your interests. Again, if you're interested in something like this, listen to this program a few times to gain familiarity. I know it's very high level, so if you want to schedule a strategy call, you're going to visit www.insidestrategicrelations.com. Use the contact form and just ask about a strategy call. And then if you have any specific questions about this expert interview model, be sure to ask at the website www.insidestrategicrelations.com, where we have numerous resources to help high income professionals, high net worth individuals transform what they know into influence. And this type of service works for politicians preparing for a campaign, for senior level executives preparing for retirement, or even subject matter experts who are preparing to level up in the business in which they're in today. I want to thank you for listening. Again, I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations, and we help transform business relationships into profits.